If a game's going to be scary, it had better plan out how it's going to scare you, go figure. If there isn't a precedent in place for just putting you in a place and having something appear on the screen in front of you without warning, then there's some construction that needs to take place. And you can't just hire Cousin Merle or Grandma Aunt Pa to toss on a hard hat and make some girders go up. You gotta go union if you want to get the job done right. It takes a steady hand to craft the real pants-changing anal malfunctions, I tell ya. Ew. I can imagine that what I like to call slow burn scares, basically the opposite of a jump scare, are some of the hardest things to do in video games, or heck, any storytelling medium really. The designers have to create a series of moments that build up to an apex of audience experience, and then have to hope that what they've come up with is strong enough on its own merit to keep us engaged past the initial point of realization. You know, make sure we stay scared once we've realized what we're looking at, or what just happened. Playing our expectations against our anticipation, not to mention assigning story, design, gameplay, and in a lot of cases animation resources is a tall order. You know, the more ingredients you add to a thing, the more could go wrong. But there is one moment in one game out there that I think shines as the perfect example of how to construct a moment like this. It's almost magical, you might say. It's a magical moment, if you will, which is the name of the new series I'm trying. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to talk about the first time we meet Lisa Trevor in Resident Evil Remake. Now, what I find so special about this moment is how, in being a single scary moment within a game constructed of plenty of others, it manages to build suspense, play our expectations against our anticipation, mechanically involve gameplay, contribute to the larger story, and as an added bonus, tell its own story all at the same time. Not only is it scary, it's a great bit of world building too. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to be taking you through this scene step by step and talking about how I see each point as important or significant. Sound fun? Well, I sure seem to think so here we go. The scare begins when we approach the groundskeeper's cabin after we've made our way through the forest out back of the Arklay mansion, about halfway into the game. Just like when we encountered the mansion for the first time, we have no idea what to expect. We have just experienced a major shift in the game's tone, taking us out of the mansion setting and sending us down a long forest path. After a good long time of adjusting to being in the great outdoors as opposed to the stuffy confining halls of the mansion, we suddenly happen upon a small cabin. All in all, just a cabin, but mentally our gaming mind designates it as a self-contained game space that is fundamentally different from the forest we've just trekked through. We're playing a horror game. There is nothing comforting about the idea of change. This thing might as well have a big old flashing lighted sign on it saying, "Something's gonna happen here." This is amplified by a few elements scattered throughout the last hour or so of play. On at least 2 occasions, we can hear a distant tortured moaning sound accompanied by rattling chains. This can mean a lot of different things, as this is a big game and there's a lot of things to foreshadow. The first of these occasions can also happen as early as literally the first room of the game. Yeah, you might have forgotten about it by this point, however, it is punctuated and followed up by one much closer to the moment in question. If you have any kind of human soul, the first occasion will have left such a scar on your mental faculties that when you hear the second time, it will bring back all of the memories of terror you experienced the first time. I might be overselling it. It's kind of quiet. That's what it sounds like, louder. Whatever. In addition to this, Barry attempts to contact us on our broken two-way radio. He is unsuccessful, as the only words we can manage to make out are "forest outside mansion" and "stay away." So, once again, coming up to the cabin, knowing that it is an enclosed space, mixed with a vague spoken warning, coupled with the strong implication of a monster being about, is a great setup for this moment. To the player who's paying attention, this cabin should be freaky as freaking heck or some shart. We enter the cabin going through a door animation like every other room transition in the game, this one accompanied by a distinctive door opening sound that we first heard when we left the mansion. It is percussive, low in pitch, and seems to resonate almost like a drum. It doesn't quite sound like a door should, or at least not a kind of door that we're familiar with in or outside of the game. So it sticks with us, which will prove important in just a moment. When we enter the cabin proper, we find an odd scene. The fireplace is alive with flame and fresh firewood. The place looks lived in, as in currently. Now this is nothing too astonishing. Up until this point, we've seen signs of life in the rooms of the mansion. Not to mention freshly lit candles, etc., but given the clues we have been provided thus far, specifically Barry warning us about the forest, this should be messing us up pretty hard. The game is quick to alleviate our fears, however, as in the back room we find a typewriter typewriter and an item chest, which is essentially this game's shorthand for "you are safe here." Yes, there are occasions when typewriters are just out in the open where there are monsters at points, but the presence of an item chest is basically a big old beanbag chair with an invitation to sit down and take a nap. When we approach the typewriter, however, we are presented with a memo. Far from the informational pockets of story that make up the majority of the rest of the memos we see scattered throughout the game, this note is borderline nonsensical. We see lines such as, "Inside red and slimy, white and hard, not true mom, where?" And, "When attached mommy, she move no more, she's screaming." All of the notes in the game are presented to us in the same font and typeface, with any and all stylisms coming from the way the letters and words are spaced, and the content thereof. The contents of this note are distinctly disturbing, as they appear to depict someone documenting their attempts at removing the faces from people they encounter in an effort to find their mother. Yeah, what? Continuing past the typewriter and the scariest note in the world, as you will come to realize soon enough, we find the item that our current objective is aiming at. Once we acquire the item, we turn around to exit the cabin, only to be stopped dead in our tracks by that oh so distinctive door opening sound. And I'm not exaggerating the stopping dead in our tracks thing. The game literally stops us where we are and makes sure that we heard the low echoey door sound. Someone else is now in the cabin with us. Given the music that starts a slow build just after this revelation, it could go in any direction, really. One of our comrades might have just joined us out here, or a zombie might have entered the building, but something is about to happen. This much we know. On our way to investigate what's going on, we are afforded the chance to stop and look down on the entrance hall of the cabin from the typewriter room. From here, the player is able to catch a glimpse of a hunched, disfigured form disappearing into the living room, and suddenly, the rules have been broken, or at the very least changed. The security we built up around being next to an item chest suddenly means nothing, and our assumptions about our safety are meaningless. This is great in the moment psychological gameplay right here, because at this point the player is most likely expecting another surprise zombie, the kind that we have seen more than a few times on our journey thus far. Unexpected, sure, but easily dispatched, so nothing really to be worried about. This, on the other hand, does not resemble those predictable zombies at all. This brief glimpse of what we are about to face is enough to stop us up and force us to reconsider what is happening based on an unknown. If the player has been really retaining hints thus far, then they could be preparing for some brand new horror. This makes it obvious that this is more than one of the run-of-the-mill zombies, and whatever it is in the room right next to us. The trademark dread of a horror game is in full effect here. No matter how much denial we may or may not be in at this point, there is only one way out of this mess, and the player inevitably moves in the only direction they are able to. Proceeding through the door into the living room is crossing the threshold into a terrifying unknown, only for it to be abruptly cut short. Just when we cross the threshold into the living room, we are struck on the head and knocked out cold. The game goes black. It is implied that some time passes as the game fades back in and we find that we have been moved and laid out in front of a fireplace. This aspect right here is genius. I love it because now we're asking questions. Being gently laid in front of a fireplace is classic indication of care or treatment of someone injured or sick. It implies that there is a person looking after you, and even though they don't necessarily know exactly how to help you, the least they can do is keep you warm and safe. We are warm and we appear not to be hurt. Check and check. So now we know that there is a new creature in this immediate vicinity. It attacked us and knocked us out cold, yet took the time to move us and place us somewhere safe. We are now both unsure of this creature's form and its intentions. The moment is cast aside, however, when the first of these uncertainties is almost immediately put to rest when the focus changes from our protagonist and falls upon the creature now entering the room. Say hello to Lisa Trevor. At this point, the developers let Lisa's character design speak for itself. After building her up with vague foreshadowing, a brief glimpse, and a short cinematic interaction, this is what we've been anticipating this whole time. She is the very vision of the grotesque and uncanny. She is clearly, or was at one time, human, yet her face and body are heavily deformed. She has another face on her back, and her hands are bound together in stalks. Why? We don't know. Her appearance is unsettling and clearly frightening. This is where the experience hinges. Is this creature before us enough of a payoff to justify the build-up? Clearly, I thought so way back when I used all of my shotgun shells to get away before running back to the mansion and using my last ink ribbon to save and quit in preparation for a long night of hiding under my bed listening to some tension-killing Weird Al. Yes, this actually happened. Yes, it happened exactly like I just told it. The problem at this point is that for most of us, myself included, we are experienced players. We've been playing this game for something like 7 hours now. Something as otherworldly or uncanny in this instance might not be as fear-inducing as I am assuming in light of the other moments in the game. We've been desensitized desensitized, to put it another way. It is at this point, however, that the developers played the rest of the cards in their hand and yelled Jin, because the brazen player will find out pretty quickly that Lisa does not go down easy, and if she does, she'll just get right back up again. It should be made clear by now that if you're not aesthetically scared of Lisa Trevor, you can at least be mechanically scared of her, because she doesn't die, and she packs a wallop. The only way to win in this scenario is to admit defeat and run away. And that is the moment in pretty much its entirety. There are 2 more encounters with Lisa throughout the game, and while they don't carry themselves as delicately as the first, it's this scene here that does the heavy lifting regarding how we should feel about this new foe of ours moving forward. We know we have to tread lightly, and avoid being in her line of fire whatever we do, and minimize our contact with her at all costs. The first encounter with Lisa Trevor is a fantastic example of how to build a slow burn scare. It keeps its audience guessing while pushing them closer and closer to the edge of their seats, forcing us at times to step back and question what we are experiencing, only to cap off the event with an aesthetic and mechanical revelation that, when combined, should be enough to frighten anybody at the controls of this game. There are very few missteps in this little enterprise, and if I had to name them, I do feel that Lisa's inclination to attack the player outright following the waking up cinematic undermines the questions the player is asking in light of the fireplace movement, and I think that Lisa's note could have been tied to its environment a little better, perhaps making it obvious that the note was typed on the very typewriter you use to save your game, perhaps even going so far as to mess with the font of the save file when saving on that typewriter to resemble Lisa's scattered formatting. I mean, how cool and creepy would it be if the implication was there that you were using Lisa's typewriter to save your game? That would be kind of trippy. In the end, I think that Lisa Trevor's introduction is one of the best examples of how to keep a scare event purposeful in a game rather than tie the fear to consequences of gameplay. Lisa's introduction is an isolated moment of fear that builds suspense, slow reveals a scare, mechanically involves gameplay, and tells a story all at the same time. Lisa first making her appearance in Resident Evil Remake plays out like a case study in how to make the latter possible, hitting multiple key points of player psychology to make it as effective as possible, before making the player demonstrate to themselves just how dangerous the situation really is. It's almost like the gaming equivalent to a painting. The whole game, in fact, is peppered with great moments like this, and if you haven't played the game yet, well, it's out on Steam and such, so, you know, get on that business. Or at least wishlist it.